Hey, thanks for clicking on this video. This was an audio-only interview. We didn't do it over Skype because he had to drive at this time. So we did it over the phone. I don't really know how well it came out. It might be hard to hear, but it was a really good interview. So I hope that you listen to it and check it out. And forgive me, it's going to cut out in a few places because we dropped the call and there's a few other issues with cameras and recording. But overall, it turned out great. So remember to leave a like, share, subscribe for more content like this, and thanks for watching.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it looks like it's recording. Okay, well, thank you so much for agreeing to come on.
You're welcome.
So I'm starting this new podcast, and the reason why I'm starting it is actually because I'm actually trying to do something similar to the work you've been doing, and I just came across your work, and it's really exciting to me. So I had no idea about a lot of the startup city stuff and any of the things like that. And I've been trying to figure out a way to kind of approach this problem of competitive governance through a different mechanism. And that mechanism is more so from like the security market approach. So I'm trying to figure out ways of delivering security services to low-income people in areas that are underserved by police protection. So that's kind of the approach I'm looking at things. But your work is really exciting to me as well. So that's why I thought I would invite you on. So just to, for my audience, who at this time is pretty small, I'd just like to introduce you. So this is Tom Bell. He is a professor
W. Bell. Tom W. Bell.
That's true. Tom W. Bell, and the website tomwbell.com. He is a professor at Chapman University. I believe you teach common law there at the law school.
Chapman University, Fowler School
Fowler
of Law.
Right.
The very generous Mr. Fowler with the W. He likes to have his name mentioned, so I'm going to give that to him.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. You've written several books, including Intellectual Privilege, and your upcoming book is Your Next Government, and with a question mark at the end. Is that correct?
Thank you for noticing. Yes, and I think your mileage may vary, but I like to hit the next. Your next government.
Yes.
Or maybe your next government. But you get the idea.
Yeah. Right. And you've done a lot of research in very interesting areas, such as polycentric law, which I'm very interested in, and graduated consent theory, and which also is very interesting. And you also do consulting for startup city related companies. So I want to get into this, but first I want to know, what is your political philosophy? Would you consider yourself to be an anarchist or anarcho-capitalist, or would you label yourself in some other way?
There was a time in my relative youth when I said, for a year, I'm trying out anarcho-capitalism for a year. So for a year, I kind of tried on that worldview because it has the immediate appeal of sternly disapproving of coercion. And that's a good, that's a good approach to coercion. It's kind of look askance at it and say, why is somebody, yelping and somebody else is swinging a stick? It cries out for justification, literally and figuratively. So I tried it out for a year, and at the end I decided not only, at the end of it I decided I'm not going to call myself anything, really. I'm going to make my own worldview, and as soon as I stick a label on me, then when I talk about that approach to politics, I've become a defender of my own personal identity, and I stopped losing my objectivity. I like to say, Liam, that I'm just a guy trying to figure out the world, just like you.
Right.
And the libertarians talk sense. The people who call themselves, I am a libertarian, they talk sense a lot. I listen to them. I listen to the lefties and conservatives, and I often end up agreeing with the libertarians, almost always. But I like to think someday maybe if a socialist, whatever, walks up and says, sit down, I got news for you, and lays it on me, and I go, wow, that's convincing, that that I would change my mind if it's convincing.
Yeah, I personally agree with that. I've really struggled with labels a lot, and I've actually invited people on my podcast and said, that's what labels we should use. I agree with you, though. that I agree mostly with libertarians and I guess anarcho-capitalists, so to speak. But yeah, like we're just trying to figure out the best way that society can run and the best solutions that we can have, and we do take a lot from that philosophy. So, anyways,
Yeah.
so now that that's out of the way, could you tell us a bit about what startup cities are, and how do you propose that they might work?
Wow. Let's start with the nomenclature. A startup cities is a term that's often used, and I have nothing against it. But there are other terms people use. The very general term I prefer is special jurisdictions, and that encompasses a wide variety of animal types. It's like a whole family of political, really not always political, of institutions, of social institutions. And it includes things like free ports, proprietary communities, homeowners associations, residential condominium associations, and things that look a lot more like startup cities. And you can, in history, find things that probably qualify as startup cities. Some of the Roman colonies, certainly, probably. Certainly some of the very early North American settlements, like in Roanoke, not so successfully, but more successfully in New Amsterdam and other places. But now, more modernly, folks have suggested, a lot of people from all across the political spectrum have suggested we should have a similar approach to cities. And we're starting to see things like that. Cake City, the King Abdullah Economic City in Saudi Arabia, is very close to a startup city. And, of course, people in Honduras have been trying and are getting closer by the day to actually implementing something very much like startup cities. So they're basically proprietary communities that have a lot of autonomy in terms of self-governance. Not complete, but a lot.
So okay, so so then what? Let's see. I just think my audience really doesn't know anything about startup cities, probably. So is there like maybe a general definition that we can give so that they are aware of what it is, as opposed to just examples?
Sure. Very generally, a special jurisdiction is a place within the geographic boundaries of a sovereign, a terrestrial sovereign, since that's the only kind of sovereign we have now, that subsists under different rules than apply elsewhere in the territory. So, in a free trade port, which is one of the traditional, most basic types of special jurisdictions, the governing officials might say, we will not pose customs or duties, the normal fees that we impose on goods coming into or leaving the country. Normally, at every other port, you bring in wheat. We don't let you land it on the dock unless you pay us. We're going to cut you slack here in this special free port to encourage trade. Okay, so that's a very simple example. Startup cities take this idea much farther. In a startup city, let's use the Honduran model, the Honduran ZEDE model. In the Honduran ZEDEs, each zone in the ZEDE system will be able to enact its own economic rules, can have its own court system, its own rules of tort. Basically, all of its own rules, they can be, indeed they are supposed to be imported from outside, with the exception of a few areas. There's a few places where the Hondurans are not giving these new proprietary communities free rein to write their own rules, such as most notably criminal law. And also the Hondurans are very sensitive to violations of human rights. There's various and many really admirable mechanisms for protecting human rights in the zones. So the Hondurans are very serious about that. And also the environment and indigenous rights and some other stuff, labor rights. But basically these zones, these proprietary communities, these startup cities, you could say, although I don't think that's the best use of that term, in Honduras are a good example of what's planned. And I'll just stop there and see if you have questions.
Yeah, okay, great. So special jurisdictions, so just to summarize, special jurisdictions are areas where, quite literally, there are special jurisdictions, meaning that there's different rules that apply in these areas. And one notable example is ZEDE, or is that ZEDE? I'm not fully sure how you pronounce that. But that's
an acronym.
Right.
It's an acronym, so it's ZEDE.
Yeah, ZEDE. Yeah, so it's So that's a jurisdiction in Honduras which is taking this idea very far, and
Yes.
And they're giving basically all of civil law up for grabs, or at least most of civil law up for grabs. They're maintaining some criminal law measures that must be enforced.
Yep.
And aside from that, though, it's pretty much fair game in terms of what you.
There's some gray area there. There's some other things, but you have the broad outline. Let's take Dubai as another example. It's sort of like Dubai plus. Dubai, with regard to economic activity within their international financial centre, since they spell it the British way, in that special jurisdiction, we can call it, special rules apply, including at some limit, which is hardly ever reached, to the common law of England and Wales.
Mm-hmm.
That's a less extreme example, but.
So specifically for ZEDE, though, I remember hearing you say in a speech I watched on YouTube that the cities there can be, to at least most, not maybe 100%, but at least to some extent privately owned. Like say a company wants to go in and start a city, they can charter that or license that in some way from the Honduran government, and just kind of institute their own system as long as they're complying with the rules set out for the zone. Is that correct?
Maybe. Some of the terms, you're not using the terms the way I would use the terms, but granted, I don't mean to criticize my friend. It's simply that nomenclature is a little bit, a little bit shaky in this field. It's kind of a new field. I would phrase it differently, but I think you have the idea. Okay. And with regard in particular to private enterprise having a hand in the setting up and running of these zones, that is actually very common in the world today. The World Bank has not only reported on this, it has basically pointed out, I don't know if it has any normative judgment behind it, the World Bank, it's not, a church, but it does say that the reason there's so many private zones is because they work. They work better than the ones that are run by the government. So basically the Hondurans are, looking at that saying, they're not fools, the Hondurans. They're saying we want privately run zones too because they work. They work better than the government-run zones.
Right, and that makes complete sense. Well, I guess at least to you and me it makes sense. Maybe to some other people they think that sounds a little bit crazy.
True.
It's true. Oh, go on.
No. People need to be educated. I like what you're doing here. We'll help them understand. I think most people, when they learn the facts, if they're presented in a fair way, that's why I wrote my book, Your Next Government. Is to help people understand. But I'm glad you're taking up the cause too. Let's and there's some things to worry about with special jurisdictions, as I also talk about in my book. And the Hondurans have not proven that they can do it right. It's complicated stuff, but I feel good about that, and the seasteaders and other places too. So carry on.
Do you have I looked you up, I learned about you, and then I kind of watched some of your speeches on YouTube and read a few of the things you've written. And all the stuff I've seen is maybe 2015, early 2015, and before. But it seems like you were kind of saying, like, this is coming up soon and we're still working it out. Is there any updates for 2017?
Yeah, a lot of updates. It's been super exciting. Yeah, sure. I'll give you some brief details of but kind of my practice. I have a consulting firm, Archimediate, LLC, and I help clients all over the world, sometimes pro bono, sometimes for money. I've had a couple of clients in Honduras in the ZEDE system, actually first the REDE system and then the ZEDE system, long story. I detail it in my book. There's a whole chapter in my book called Stories of the Sort Ordinarily Recounted Over Drinks.
Could you say that? I couldn't hear that.
Sure. Stories of the sort ordinarily recounted over drinks.
Okay.
So, all right. So I'm going to draw on that and kind of give you the updates.
Okay.
Let's start with Liberland. I've worked in Liberland pro bono. Liberland, actually, surprisingly, my book is already a little out of date because they claim, last I heard, they're going to appeal. They're going to appeal to the Croatian Constitutional Court about their rights. So Liberland is not dead.
Okay.
And it's a great story. Yeah, Liberland. I may see some Liberlanders. I may be in Poland in June. I'm working right now on, I got an offer to speak at a conference in Poland in June, into June. It's like the Von Mises Society locally. Anyhow, so I might get to meet some Liberlanders. Maybe I'll finally go visit the homeland. Okay. In Honduras, the news is, as always, and I shouldn't say as always, since June. Okay, so in June of 2016, I was in Miami with a crew of developers who want to start a Honduran ZEDE, and they were having hearings. They were there to present their case before a panel of officials representing the government of Honduras in the zone governance system. And since then, I can say they're making progress. That is the official statement of what is going on. They are making progress.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, it is good to hear. And, of course, how fast they're making progress makes a big difference. And I can't really tell you how hard they're hitting the gas. I think we all know what direction they're heading in.
Yeah. Are you there? Okay, it's recording now. Sorry about that.
Right.
So where were we? We were talking about the progress of ZEDE, and so I think that was a really good update. Thank you for sharing that, because I was definitely wondering.
Wait, we're not done, son. We're not done.
Great. Okay, great.
I'm saving the best for last.
Oh, okay.
All right, so, yeah, the Liberlanders are remarkably to me. In my book, maybe needs to be updated. In the book, I basically left it as, man, they're banging their heads against the Croatian legal system, such as it isn't, because it isn't much.
Yeah.
And then the Hondurans are making progress, and they are, I was telling you, I can't tell you how fast they're getting there. I can say they're making progress, the ones I talk to, and I talk to everybody. But we all know where they're heading, and that is to create zones in the ZEDE system, which is a really exciting prospect.
Yeah.
I think it's going to happen. If it does happen, it'll probably happen before the end of this year. There'll be somebody saying, I'm here standing under zone law, and it's going to feel really good for a lot of people. I bet you, awesome. Before the year's out. Yeah, it is awesome. The seasteaders in French Polynesia, I have been helping, and it's been a great experience. They're wonderful people with a wonderful project, which seems to be both fairly and warmly received in French Polynesia. I say fairly because it's very easy to be critical, especially when people talk big, and the seasteaders have grand dreams. It's not just dreams, though. They got engineering. They're doing this in an incremental kind of, stepwise way. And then the French Polynesians are so far saying, keep talking. It sounds all right. Let's see what we can do here. We have a memorandum of understanding. I say we because I worked on that, and I helped negotiate that, and I'm glad it got signed. It's signed between the Seasteading Institute and the government of French Polynesia. The president signed. And, okay, so the next year, we are working on creating legislation to accommodate what will be the first of its kind sea zone, which is a combined land and water special jurisdiction. Maybe I shouldn't say the absolute first because, ports encompass water, but we're taking it a little farther with the sea zone. It's going to be really interesting. I think it's going to be very successful. It's daring and successful. That's what we're after.
That is awesome. Yeah, I heard about that. I've actually wanted to invite maybe some of the people from the Steading Institute on this show and talk about that. So it's so I guess just for my audience, maybe stay tuned. If they say yes, we'll see. But that's great. So you're involved with pretty much every cool libertarian project.
I don't know that. There could be some others.
Well,
there could be some others.
Yeah. It's awesome though. It's really awesome. So I
tell you what, I just got to say, Liam, if you find some people who say, I want to get on this too, but there's no other spots, there's some other spots. Just have them, I can tell you where else they can go here on Earth and do some interesting things.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's part of the thing that I'm looking into right now. But coming at it from a different angle, I'm interested in the angle that these guys are going as well. But they definitely, I think there's a lot of people doing great stuff in this. It's just exciting. It's just really exciting. So I want to talk about something that you are involved with. Are you the creator of it, maybe? I'm not entirely sure, but it's called ULEX, the operating system, legal operating system.
Legal operating system, ULEX. Yeah, I guess you could call me the creator in the same way maybe Linus Torvalds is a creator of, of Linux. Okay.
So what is it, and how does does it apply to these cool special jurisdictions?
Well, thank you for asking. ULEX is, as you yourself said, a legal operating system. It's an open source legal operating system. And it is therefore rather like a kernel in something like Linux or, GNU Linux. Sometimes people call it that. And it's designed for startup cities, proprietary communities, really any community that needs a set of comprehensive, I think comprehensive enough, it's a good starter set, needs a comprehensive set of rules for civil law, and also a means to resolve disputes arising under those rules. So basically it's the substantive, there's three kinds of things in ULEX, and one kind of thing that's not in ULEX. There's a lot that's not in it, infinite many things not in it, but what's in ULEX is our procedural rules. Here's what to do if you have a fight. Substantive rules. Here are the rules that determine whether or not you have a right such that you should, show up in court and follow those procedures. And then there's some meta rules, just to make sure, it's kind of like to make sure there's no like runtime errors where you get caught in like a loop or something crazy happens, or you don't know, well, which of these two rules applies. There's some, just a few meta rules to keep things running smoothly. And there you go. That's ULEX. Anybody can download it, kind of run it, tinker with it. Right now, version 1.0 has been published with a proof of existence attached to it. So you can now know reliably, if you trust cryptography and the prime number factoring and such. I have the real copy of ULEX in my hot little hand.
Nice.
Which is important for rule of law purposes. I mean, the number one thing is, do we all agree that these are the rules that we're playing under? And ULEX has, thanks to cryptography, I nailed that problem at least. And how does it relate to these startup cities? Well, I can't say yet that I know any one of them is going to run ULEX. It's not impossible. I think it would be good, and I'm helping people who want to make that happen, make it happen. And if it does happen, I think we'll have reason, everybody, to say, well, I'm glad that happened.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I think that's really a great analogy. I actually come from a computer science background. I really like the analogy. When you said code is code, that's really smart. I never thought about it that way, but I really agree with that. And just like Linux, which is a kernel and it's open source, there's flavors of Linux, which are operating systems that utilize the Linux kernel that are based off it. So it makes sense that different special economic zones can adopt whatever flavor of ULEX that they like, but it's a good starting point. So is ULEX like, is it a system that's meant to be how do I put this? Is it meant to be like is it an idealized system, or is it intended to be, given the constraints of something like ZEDE, the best system you can think of to run on the constraints of ZEDE?
I designed it with the ZEDEs in mind, not thinking, this is tailored to the ZEDEs, but sort of, here is my client with a problem. How do I solve this problem? And that's where basically ULEX gets started. And then with the seasetters, basically, apart from their special needs of maritime law, insofar as they need rules for their communities. And ULEX is kind of like, you can do it on land or on ocean. It's because it's pretty general. Then you could run it on a seabed. So, does that answer your question? Is it designed for the real world? Yes. It's not everything you need, okay? So it's just a kernel. You can't hold a kernel in your hand and call somebody up and figure out where you are on Google Maps. There's still other stuff needed. Really interesting stuff. By the way, I said I'd tell you what was in ULEX. I told you it's got procedural, substantive, and meta rules. What's not in it is criminal law. I have a criminal law module, which is optional. So if you have a community that says, I want to run crim law, I have a set of crim laws for you, but you, of course, have to build an administrative structure to administer the criminal law. That's another thing that has to be added.
Oh, okay.
I don't do that. I provide procedural rules and substantive rules for crim if you need it, and they're good rules. They're like all the other rules in ULEX. I didn't say this, Liam, but it's true. Basically, none of the rules came from me. They're basically almost to a one. They are from other sources, and they are flag-free. They come from private or international sources, not from any particular sovereign. And to me, that's very important. I think it should be more important to other people, but I'm not going to, I can make that argument. I'll just say, let's observe All the sources are flag free. There's a few of the rules I kind of wrote myself, but anybody who, it's a long story. Just trust me, I didn't do anything very fancy. You look at it and you go, well, yeah, duh, anybody would have done that. And then I organized it in a certain way. I think the big step, Liam, was actually, and now everybody we all kind of slap our foreheads, code is code as if truism. Big surprise. I know there's more to it than that. There's a little more nuance. But basically, somebody had to have the idea, oh, let's do this for law. And, I'm probably several people did, and I just had more time on my hands. I like this bone, it's a great bone to chew on. And so there you go. I feel like, okay. And I had clients. I think that's really what drove me. It was the needs. I had clients that said, we need this. And I said, wow, okay, I'll work on that. And there you go.
Wow, that's interesting. So actually that was one of the questions I had written down for you. What do you do about criminal law? I thought maybe you would have some sort of way, like some other component of it that I hadn't heard of, where maybe you would talk about replacing criminal law with like some transferable tort system, like something like what David Friedman might advocate for. But nothing.
Oh, I've advocated that too. Yeah.
Okay, so is there any talk of that in it, or is that just that would just be for like some flavor that if someone wanted to implement, they could make a flavor of ULEX and add that type of functionality?
Yeah. Okay, so if you're running ULEX version 1.0 without the criminal law module, you would still have tort claims, and tort claims definitely allow for civil claims against things like assault, battery, conversion, theft or destruction of private property, trespass. There is criminal trespass, but there's civil trespass too. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. You can bring that against a stalker who's like flipping, driving you nuts. You don't have to just throw him in jail. You can bring in a civil suit and say, causing pain and suffering, distress. So you could do that in ULEX, and the civil suits would be run the way civil suits are run. And I have procedural rules. ULEX has procedural rules for that. Wouldn't be a jury system. And you would end up with monetary damages and or equitable relief in the form of court orders, which might include things like get out of town. You are now barred. You have breached the terms of your contract with us, okay? When you sign on the dotted line, we let you into our, let's admit it, pretty nice community of law-abiding folk. You said you're going to abide, and you didn't. And you kick them out. Now, this is interesting, Liam. You say, well, kick them out, and that's... Well, let me just say this, and then I'll turn over back to you. I can foresee two kinds of communities. Those in which the sovereign host does not give the special jurisdiction the power over criminal law, because for good reason. You don't give a homeowners association the power to jail people, right? You just don't. And so you could have a host that says, we want you to be like, Dubai in terms of economics or whatever, and even a lot of other stuff, but you don't get to jail people. You're going to have to exile people. And then the host might say, whoa, you're throwing out all your garbage. What the hey? You wouldn't let us imprison them. What are we supposed to do? You want to jail them? Well, here they are. They are in cuffs. So then you'll have other jurisdictions where the sovereign says, okay, subject to oversight, we'll let you do some penitentiary type stuff. And then you will have to face that problem or the question. And I don't have an answer to how exactly every community wants to do that, because that's up to them.
So this can highlight my lack of understanding of law. And since you are an attorney, this is maybe a great question for you. But in that sense, what really is the distinction between civil and criminal law? Because my understanding of criminal law was just that, assuming there was a state, criminal law is where the state or society, so to speak, takes offense to the act of the criminal act, as opposed to the victim. But if a private city is taking offense to an act, is that criminal law? I mean, a capital offense doesn't necessarily have to be criminal law, and also an offense that ends you up in jail. You could have a civil case that ends you up in jail if that's how your system was structured. But I thought it was predicated on whether the victim prosecutes or whether society, so to speak, prosecutes. Is that the correct understanding of the situation?
Maybe.
Okay.
I hear you saying some things I certainly agree with, and I hear you saying some other things that, again, I'm not sure I would agree with, because in part your use of the terminology is it's just not what I'm used to. So I can give you a quick version, which I think you'll mostly say, yes, of course, it's what I was saying or what I meant.
Mm-hmm.
One is certainly, and this is the one thing you want to hang your hat on, and it's a good one, but I don't think it's the only distinguishing feature. You're saying, well, it's because it's the people versus, or the king versus, or the republic versus, whatever, the state versus.
Mm-hmm.
And then, on the other side of the versus is the criminal, and the victim is kind of standing off to the side.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe sometimes there's kind of moderated systems where the victim has some kind of rights, maybe even rights, from some sort of damages imposed, or from some kind of victims' rights fund. But that's not the only thing, because criminal suits generally have extraordinary remedies, such as imprisonment. Now, you mentioned that. Let's not confuse. There's different ways to divvy up these functions. It's not unknown, even in the common law system, for there to be private criminal suits.
Right.
In which case, yes, private parties basically get to assert the prosecutorial powers against the criminal. David Friedman talks about this very cogently. It's David Friedman. He just makes everything so clear. But there's another way to do things. And this is the distinction. I'll just say, here's the way I'm using criminal civil. Basically, not only is it the distinction you have already pointed out, the people versus, as in the alternatives opposed to, one person versus, or we people versus, you could have some kind of class action, this guy's a criminal to a lot of people, versus that criminal over there. And the remedies. About the only way you can imprison people, as I understand it, under the common law, when you talk about remedies, is, maybe you're allowed a defense against the tort of false imprisonment. So if you're holding somebody in a confined situation, in the common law, you can't do that for very long, okay? You don't get to throw them in a cage. They don't do cages. Now, maybe, like to use a classic example, you catch somebody shoplifting, you take them to the back room, and you maybe get to lock them. You call the police. There's some kind of criminal function kicking in, or at least you'll hold them long enough so you can search their goods or whatever it is you're allowed to do up to the limit. Or you see a man assaulting a woman, you tackle him and hold him to the ground, and you hold him spaced to the cement because he's trying to get away, and you put him under citizen's arrest. If you do that for a week, the guy has a claim of false imprisonment. There's a limit. So certainly a private community operating only the common law with only civil claims could catch a bad guy. Suppose it's a big community. It's the size of Massachusetts. Henry Fordlandia was about half the size of Connecticut. It was a big, big chunk of Amazon. So you catch a guy. You don't really have jails. You can't ship him out right away. You get to hold him overnight. You got to feed him. You don't get to beat him. Good Lord, it's not a government prison. But you got to get him. You kick him out. It takes a while. That's as far as you can go. You don't get to beat up people either. Let's be clear about that. You can wrestle them to the ground. You can put them in cuffs. Maybe you could tase them. You could shoot them if it's reasonable self-defense. You can kill them. You're allowed to use lethal self-defense. Everybody gets that. You can eject people from your private property. It's a private community, and basically you say, hey, we let you in on a license, or you're under a license and you breach the terms. You're now in breach of license. Scram, and we're going to help you get there. You don't think, no, you're not staying. You're in cuffs, and so you get to use some force, but no cages. No cages. So that's a huge difference. Some people would say, David Friedman explains why. They have a point. Some people would say, society's going to go to hell if you don't have the power to beat up and or cage people. And David Friedman explains why that is a plausible claim. But I think it is possible you can manage a society well without those powers, and then overall we would all be better off if we didn't let big, powerful institutions exercise those kinds of, their privileges, really. Privileges, because they're defenses against normal common law, claims.
Right. That's very interesting. That makes sense. That's a good answer.
Thank you.
So, maybe I'll back up for a sec, and because I know that my listeners / viewers are not going to necessarily be familiar with everything that you've advocated for, whereas I've researched it more. But one thing you talk about is co-op cities and just like privately owned communities. And I see that why this really plays well with ZEDE, because ZEDE is an opportunity, this is roughly speaking, of course, but it's an opportunity for a private institution to come in and set up a city-like community. I know that might not be the right language exactly, but more or less.
Yeah,
So
pretty close. Yeah, it's pretty close.
So I can see how you would, when you're advocating for a ULEX or something to be used at ZEDE, you would want to talk about co-op cities and stuff like that. However, I know a lot of other people that might agree with you on a lot of these issues wouldn't necessarily expect for a whole community to be owned by one joint stock company or something like that. What is your opinion on, like, if you could really just say, no, Honduras is like, no, this is right here is like, this area in the south is pure, like, anarchy, like, we're just hands off.
Whoa, where'd you get pure anarchy? Where'd that come from? Nobody's proposing pure anarchy.
No, I know you're not. I'm saying if they said that, meaning that they're not, and I don't mean that like, because I know you said you don't have that label, but what I'm trying to say.
No, but I mean, it's not even a descriptive, whether regards, it's not personal with me. It's just that's
right.
not the Honduran system. It is not set up to allow
That's what I'm saying.
Anarchy.
That's what I'm saying. So if they did, and they said, we're just going to, what I mean by that is completely hands-off. Like, this is a completely hands-off. Like, or maybe we could pick another country. Let's say Belize. It's for hypothetical, purely hypothetical. Say that there was a Belize.
I don't. Go ahead.
Okay.
No, actually, hey, listen. Just give me a sec here, okay?
Sure.
I'm at home now. I need to take care of something. So
okay.
Let me call you back in like 4 minutes, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, hold on. Bye.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Now it's recording. So, I guess what I was saying is I didn't. Anarchy was just a hypothetical variable. It didn't have to be anarchy. I'm just trying to get away from. Oh, okay. I'll just ask my question and then I'll kind of say why I was putting it that way. What do you think about having two co-ops, homeowners associations, joint stock companies, however you want to say it, two different entities, maybe having slightly different versions of ULEX or some system like that, side by side, or maybe even more than two, like within the confines of the same geographic city. And the reason I was trying to say anarchy is just because I thought maybe that wouldn't be allowed under any current system such as ZEDE. And I'm talking more of a hypothetical question as opposed to like having you say, well, that's not how it works. Does that make sense?
I understand that you want to pose me a hypothetical that does not exist. And you didn't mean to say I'm describing a Honduran system. So you're describing a hypothetical system which may not exist, and you want an evaluation of it in some sort of rubric. Yes?
Yeah, I just want to know what your thoughts are on if you consider the dynamics of having multiple of these, because I think it's more realistic. Not at this time, but like say if you're thinking about having a society built on this, say that governments change because all this competition, or and looking like hundreds of years down in the future or something. Like it's not necessarily that every city would have one owner. I mean, I could just imagine other scenarios. Does that make sense?
Okay, so here I understand now. We're going to talk about a scenario that perhaps might apply in the future. I like thinking about those things. I totally invite that. And now the only sort of issue is I don't quite understand what you're describing. I could go straight to here's how I think things will look, will likely look, and actually I'm pretty happy about how things are going to work out. I predict a great thing.
Yeah,
I really do. We could screw it up, but really I think it's really going to be great. Really going to be great. But I'm not sure I understand what you're trying to describe. I can go straight to here's what I think will happen, and it's really good. But you can say no. Here's what I mean. And you're saying something about having something working within the same area. I don't quite understand what you're proposing there. So you can either explain your proposal, or I can go straight to here's the future.
Yeah, just tell me about the future.
Of course, the usual caveats apply. I could be wrong. The future could turn out differently. But here's kind of the future that I'm aiming at roughly. It's like we're out on the desert. I used to hike in the desert a lot. Love the desert. If you want to hike in a general direction, you see your camp down below. You've been up in the mountains. And there's a few washes between you and your camp. And off on the horizon, far away, there's a big mountain. Pick out the peak behind your camp and start walking for that, because you're going to lose your camp. You're going to drop down in the wash, and you're not going to know which way you're going. And you look at that mountain peak. All right, so we're going to talk about what that mountain peak looks like. In this future world, basically, we don't really have nation states anymore. It's a little bit like dinosaurs. Okay, did dinosaurs really die out? No, they became birds, which are sometimes fearsome, but mostly for humans kind of really cool. Sometimes really useful, chickens. Sometimes, are beautiful.
I'm sorry, but the connection just all of a sudden got much worse, and it's kind of like very muffled.
Okay, let's keep going. I'll go back. Just tell me how far you need me to rewind. I'm back in my vehicle now, driving.
Oh, you're back in your car.
Go meet a beautiful young lady. Go for a walk. You still there?
Can you just start that whole explanation over? I'm sorry.
Sure. How far back? Thing about nation states, the future in general.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like after I asked my last question about like what your system would how your system would work in the future. Or how your system would work in the future.
Well, I say my system. I mean, if you're talking about UX will be part of this. I wrote UX because I want this future to come about.
Right.
The beautiful thing about it, from my point of view, is we get to do this together. There's going to be so many people doing great things to make this happen. Mm-hmm. So we have a variety of jurisdictions which are pretty sovereign. Mm-hmm. They are not necessarily divided by geographic boundaries. They're kind of interwoven. Mm-hmm. An analogous era was the high medieval era, in which there was actually relative prosperity. It's true the Roman Empire had fallen, although the Roman Empire is a lot more polycentric than a lot of people realize. But at any rate, history goes through these kinds of ebbs and flows when there's sometimes a lot of many jurisdictions intermingled and mixed and bumping up against each other. And then you have, Mongol Empire periods when everything's kind of the same. And then the Mongol Empire breaks into smaller sub-empires, and it happens over and over again. Right now we're going towards a lot of breaking up of jurisdictions. But now something interesting is going to happen, because just as the advent of personal computers drove the evolution of software, the breakup of jurisdictions that's happening now, I document it in my book, The Next Government. We're seeing this happen now. Lots and lots of special jurisdictions. And people like you and me, Liam, are kind of hitting the gas on making more and better of them. We're going to see operating systems that operate across governments. And this is going to create network effects. And that's the kind of politically, at a very high level, political structure level, the kind of world we're going to be living in.
Okay. Right.
Networked jurisdictions, instead of big mainframe, hard iron computers, big iron computers, each of which runs its own operating system. That's kind of the world we're getting away from. You get big iron, every big, kind of slow and awkward and inefficient and expensive machine runs its own special special software from operating system up. And now we're getting to the point where, and this is what Ulick is designed to help drive, that you have various, and it's not a totally new thing. Like with Dubai. Dubai's kind of running some English and Wales common law, and Ulick's just going to push that a little harder, strip out the flags, take away the guns, let's keep it peaceful, boys. And then we're going to have network effects kicking in, right? Computers were awesome before the Internet. With the Internet, computers are really, really wonderful. And we're going to have that happen now with communities and people, and it's just going to be great.
Okay. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I had one other question about that. I'm just looking at my list. Sorry. So, I guess you answered in your answers. You answered all these questions that I have. So I mean, basically, I guess my final question is, well, okay. I guess it's kind of like personal advice. I'm 22, and I studied computer science at UCSB, and I found that I did not like it. I mean, I liked it. I was actually quite good at it, but I found that it's not really my passion. I'm more interested in this type of stuff, and so I have dropped out of UCSB studying computer science. and I want to kind of get into this, and I'm right now I'm talking with security companies. I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to basically work with them, help them with their tech, and simultaneously learn about how they're delivering security and basically understand the dynamics of the security markets. And I'm predominantly looking at areas. Right now, I'm looking at underserved areas in the United States, but I'm also thinking of looking abroad to areas that have maybe even worse protection. And so, I guess this is just like it's not really a super pointed question, but I just wanted to know if you have any career advice for me, or just general suggestions given what you just learned about my personal situation.
Okay, let me kind of try restating your question or inquiry. It's not quite a question. It's more like here's a topic I'd like to hear you address. All right, let me hear.
Yeah.
See if I got it right. So tell me, my guess is where are the kind of opportunities? Where are the opportunities for a young man who has ambitions, who wants to help, who wants to work with some personal security issues in the startup cities space?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'd be happy to talk to that. Not really my field of specialization, but I've rubbed up against it a little bit.
Okay.
First of all, I happen to have some personal contact with some people who've worked with security at Burning Man. Burning Man is a good example of a proprietary community which is largely self-governing. And they have security issues, and they long to take care of them themselves. And the structures that pop up and then dissipate again at Burning Man have a number of issues that are useful also in the real world. For example, they are battle-tested. And if you plan to do security in some poorer parts of the world, you're going to also have to deal with having dust in every crevice and not having water, etc. Okay? So try to connect with them. I happen to know Burning Man. Well, you know this too. It's in the news. You might know it. They have now purchased some property near the playa. Something's going on there interesting. I don't know much more about it, but, you make calls, you make yourself available, you ask good questions, whatever. You might find some people that can tell you more. What else? Detroit. You know about Detroit? The name escapes me. I believe Reason TV did a little piece.
Threat Management Center.
Yeah. Everything I've heard about them makes them sound awesome. High tech offers a number of advantages in the provision of security. In the environments where some of these cities and communities could be popping up, technology might actually have really big advantages. And yet it is less available in those communities. This provides an opportunity for someone who will basically import some really good technology into a tough environment, yes. And we're not talking about military security devices, although, of course, there's some overlap. And, who knows what's going on there. And it could be actually already a lot of firms saying, this is just a demilitarized version of our normal perimeter guarding system, and we can put it in for $10,000 a kilometer on rough terrain. That maybe exists. If not, it should. And even if it does exist, these markets are not worldwide typically. They're very fractured, as far as I've been able to discern. There are obviously some big companies, but it's a very bespoke field. So you may become the expert in providing security for private communities in Oceania,
Right.
If I continue, I could go on. I'll give you one more, and then I'll just do it if you want to take a breath. I'm almost done with the immediate opportunities at hand. Refugee cities. Michael Castle Miller and some other people I know and respect are working together to perhaps regulate refugee camps under kind of a standardized zone model. I don't know exactly what they plan. I know they plan to do good things for people in need, and I can't help but support that. And I can't help but think they have security issues, or will if they ever get to actually helping with refugee camps. So I'll stop there. There's some stuff actually happening that could engage a young man like you.
Yeah, that's great. I'm definitely that's exactly kind of what I was thinking. You definitely told me about some opportunities that I was not aware of, and so that's really great. I might email you and ask for maybe a little bit more information if I chew on this for a little bit, re-listen to it.
Sure.
But that, yeah, and thank you so much. It's wrapping up. It's almost 4:00, so it's basically I have to go. But thank you so much for agreeing to come on my podcast. It's a small podcast, but when people like you agree to come on, it's a huge boost. It's awesome. It makes great content. My viewers love it. I know they're going to like this episode. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing. It's fascinating, and I look forward to reading your book, and I believe it comes out this year.
Coming out this year, Your Next Government. The subtitle is From the Nation State to Stateless Nations. Cambridge University Press. In the press right now. They tell me before the end of the year in your hot little hands, or in e-version. And please make sure, Liam, that you send me an email with a link so I can promote your podcast to my friends.
Oh, thank you so much. I will definitely do that. And yeah, maybe I can have you back on when your book comes out, and we can talk about the contents therein.
All right. I'm sure I'll hear more from you. Go get them.
What's that?
I'm sure I'll hear more from you. Go get them.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of opportunities in this burgeoning new field. These young, ambitious people.
Great. Yeah, I'm glad to hear it. Yeah. So let's definitely be in touch. And thank you so much. Do you have anything else you want to say before we close?
I'll just say thank you, and I wish you good luck with your podcast.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye.